What's up, everybody? Jay Yelas here. Going to talk a little bit today about fish and docks, known in Alabama as piers, but the rest of the country calls them docks. And I love fish and docks or piers, and you know, they're not all created equal. Well, that's one thing I've learned. A lot of big lakes, there'll be hundreds, maybe thousands of boat docks, and there's certain key ones that the fish seems like always use, and then most of the docks in the lake may have a fish around them every now and then, but not that often. And some of the things I like to look for in docks that are key is whether the dock is maybe located on a point. Those are always good. If you have a series of docks in a row that are close together, usually the docks on the end of that row of docks can be really good. A lot of times it's the bottom composition. Like you might have a dock that's built on a chunk rock or like a big boulder bottom. And if you have docks with a lot of rocks under them, that's a huge fish magnet. They'll hold fish year round. Anyway, there's a couple ideas for you of different docks, but I love to fish docks with a jig. I use a Punisher jig with a Yamamoto flapping hog, and I like to flip them with my flipping stick. And I'm generally concentrating on the shade. I really want to get it up in the shade, and a lot of times, you know, early in the morning or on a cloudy day, the fish will be along the edge, like they might be right there. But in the middle of a bright sunshiny day, you might have to get your bait way up underneath there. Like this dock goes back like 20 feet, so I can skip my jig way up underneath it. And that's sometimes what it takes to get the bite. Sometimes you'll have docks with brush piles around them, and if you know where that brush pile sits, like that's the key spot to fish. Now a big dock like this, it may have one nice big brush pile underneath it. And that's probably going to be the key feature on that dock, is that brush pile. But if there is no brush, then they're probably just, I would guess on this dock that the bass would be under this big walkway right here. Probably not going to, that's a lot more likely than one of these interior boat slips. And the other really good spot that's probably going to be the key spot on this dock, just trying to read it, will be this extension that sticks out here towards deep water. That's probably the section of the dock that's the closest to deep water, and that should be really a solid place to look for them. But as far as the technique goes, a jig is a great bait to skip, and it's just this is where the pitching technique really comes in handy. You want to start with your rod tip down and kind of grip your bait. You want to start with a jig about 6 inches above the reel, about like I have it here. And it's not like a slingshot, not at all. I'm just kind of holding the bait in my hand, and all the action is in your wrist. So you can pitch it out there, kind of get that wrist rotation. I can get it way up in there out of sight where I can't even see the bait. And some of you that know me well know that I can kind of pitch and flip with both hands. And you know, I'm right-handed. I'm probably more accurate with my right arm than any, but I've found over the years like it puts a lot of strain on you, on your elbow and your shoulder and stuff. Pitching jigs way up under docks, setting the hook and pulling fish out of that heavy cover. So if I get to where, you know, I'm aching and I've got a sore elbow, I'll go the other way, hold the rod in my left hand and make those same pitches and presentations. So I find that these the Kistler Z-bone flipping rods and the Lew's Tournament Pro reels are just really lightweight and just a pleasure to fish. They really minimize the fatigue in a day of fishing with the big flipping stick in hand. So as I'm going along here, I'm looking for shade. I happen to be enjoying a nice sunny day today on the lake. I'm looking for little shade pockets. I know that's probably where I'm going to get the bite, and I'll just fish along through here. I'm not even going to cast to the spots that have direct sunlight on them. Like, and you may miss a fish doing that, but for the most part, I'm playing the odds. I'm gonna, instead of flipping to this post right here, which is in the sun, I'm not gonna flip there. I'm gonna flip it up under the dock, up into that heavy shade, because I know that's a more likely ambush point for a bass than these outer pulls. Whereas early this morning, those outer poles may have been where the fish was. I'm coming along in here. Sometimes you'll come to a pontoon boats like this, and if you can shoot one up under the pontoon boat, I've caught a ton of bass over the years doing that. You got nice little shady pilings right there between the pontoon and that bass boat. Flip it in there. That bait hits the bottom. You know, I'll work it a little ways slowly on the bottom, but for the most part, if I don't get bit in the first 10 seconds, I'm gonna reel it in and pitch it again. Now, boat positioning is also big flipping. Like you'll notice here, I work down this edge, but I've got this key feature right here. So I wanna be careful that my boat doesn't drift too far forward to where I would spook a fish that's on this dock. Whoop, so I've stopped right about where I think I need to stop, and I'm just gonna pitch up underneath this shady dock here. It's a lot deeper there. I just noticed it took about 5 or 6 feet for my bait to get to the bottom. Now I've got good shade on these outside posts on this dock, so I'm gonna stop and fish the outside posts now because they're in the shade. Whereas these posts were in the sun, not very appealing. Now up into there, I've got some lily pads growing. So that's kind of an interesting feature too. There's no pads along this whole section of this dock, but right here, I've got some pads kind of intersecting with the dock, and that can be a good fish holding cover too when you've got some, you know, 2 or 3 different types of habitat meeting in the same spot. I'll take my time and flip that nice and thoroughly. When the fish aren't really feeding, a lot of times you've got to drop it right on their head to get them to bite. And when they're aggressive, of course, their strike zone's a lot bigger. They might swim up to 10 feet to grab your bait, but when they're off and they're not actively feeding, that's when you want to be real thorough. Flip to every single piling on this dock, because you don't know which piling that fish is sitting next to, but he's probably going to be in there. And one other tip I can give you on when you're fishing deeper docks is when you flip your bait in, you don't want to engage your reel right away, because what that does is it causes the bait to pendulum back towards the boat. When you pitch it in there, I like to finish with my rod tip high, and I got lots of slack, and I can drop the rod tip as the bait sinks to the bottom. That way my bait, I know, is going straight down along that pole, as opposed to like flipping it in and then clicking it in gear as soon as it hits the water. Now my bait is swinging back towards the boat as it drops, and that's not a preferred presentation. So anyway, those are some of my dock fishing tips, and try docks on your home lake with a Punisher jig and a Yamamoto flapping hog. I love docks. I've caught so many fish on them over the years. They're just a great fish holding structure, especially when the water starts cooling off in the fall like it is now. Have a good one.